Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Museum of the American Indian. Normally, we would be doing this program from our lovely Potomac, but given the world circumstances, we are going to be doing it virtually this year. We are going to be sharing 3 different sets for this program. We have our own Cynthia Vidaurri from research, who will be talking about what is Day of the Dead and the traditions. We will be doing a food program with Naftali Duran, East Mixteco, and we will finish out with Marigolds by Evelyn and Joaquin. And we will start with Cynthia. Cynthia, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you, Hayes. My name is Cynthia Vidaurri, and I'm a researcher here in the National Museum of American Indian, and my specialty is in folklore or traditional culture.
Cynthia, thank you. So why don't you tell us what exactly is Day of the Dead?
So in its most basic sense, Day of the Dead is an act of remembrance. It serves a human need to be connected with departed loved ones. During this time, the departed spirits return to the earthly plane and coexist with loved ones. Various forms of remembering days continue to be practiced by indigenous peoples of the Americas. In Mexico, these days are widely known as Días de los Muertos, where November 1st is set aside for children who have passed on, and November 2nd is for adults. But the precise celebration dates vary according to the customs of individual families and communities. The contemporary interpretation of the Day of the Dead can include a wide range of activities, but the ofrenda is a cornerstone of the event.
So what exactly are the origins of Day of the Dead in Mexico?
Well, before the Spanish arrived in Mexico, the many indigenous communities had elaborate philosophies and rituals that were associated with death. Perhaps the most noted events were the Micael Huitontli, which is the Little Feast of the Dead, and the Micael Huitl, which is the Great Feast of the Dead. The arrival of Spanish and Roman Catholicism brought other ways of commemorating the deceased. In Mexico, like in other places in the Americas, indigenous and Catholic practices came together throughout hundreds of years, and the resulting Day of the Dead tradition reflects both of these influences. Perhaps the most noted of events were the Micael Huitontli, which is the Little Feast of the Dead, and the Micael Huitl, which means the Great Feast of the Dead in the Nahuatl language. The arrival of the Spanish and Roman Catholicism brought other ways of commemorating the deceased. In Mexico, like in other places in the Americas, indigenous and Catholic practices came together throughout many hundreds of years, and the resulting tradition of Day of the Dead reflects both of these influences.
So Cynthia, could you tell us what is an ofrenda and what is the difference between the term ofrenda and the term altar?
Well, an ofrenda, which literally means offering, is a temporary construction where the deceased loved one is received during Days of the Dead. The objective is to create a space where you engage with your departed ones and enjoy time with them and offer the things they enjoyed in life. Think of it like you were sitting at a dinner table and you had special guests that had been invited over. These places are sometimes called altars, but the term ofrenda more deeply conveys the idea that it is a gift that is offered to a loved one rather than a sacrifice.
And where would you find these ofrendas?
Ofrendas are primarily constructed in homes, but the tradition has expanded way into public spaces. So you can now find ofrendas in office buildings and hotel lobbies, museums, university buildings, and in town squares. These public ofrendas can be large art installations or exhibitions, like those you see in Zócalo, which is Mexico City's largest plaza.
And what exactly does an ofrenda look like?
Ofrenda designs are really quite varied. Some families build specially constructed platforms, and others just use the things you would find at home, like a tabletop or a dresser surface. Sometimes colors and directional positioning can be significant on ofrendas and can be associated with the 4 cardinal directions. Ofrendas can be of different sizes and different shapes. They can sometimes have decorative backdrops, or they can have things like arches which are covered with flowers and fruit. The ofrenda surface can be covered with a variety of materials, such as handcrafted tablecloths or ready-made textiles, or sometimes petates, which are hand-woven formats, can be used as well.
Well, that's very fascinating. Could you tell us what else would go on an ofrenda?
Sure, to the experienced eye, the ofrenda can sometimes seem to be a random assembly of items. But actually, in reality, people pay a lot of attention to what is selected and where it's placed. While each ofrenda is unique, we can describe some of the well-known elements. And it's easiest to understand these objects by their purpose and function on the ofrenda. You have things like visual and aromatic elements, which are necessary to help the soul navigate from the land of the dead to the land of the living. Candles will illuminate the way, and flowers provide a scent to follow. So, for example, the cempasúchil, which is a Mexican marigold, with its vivid orange color and its distinct fragrance, is an essential on the ofrendas. Also, the unique aroma of copal, which is a tree resin incense, is also an ofrenda standard. Other elements like salt and water protect the soul on their journey. Some families also place crucifixes or Catholic saints, and routinely the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is the patron saint of Mexico, occupies a very prominent position. Even though she appears as a Catholic saint, for some she is Tonantzin, and this was an Aztec deity that was venerated at the place where the Virgin of Guadalupe appeared in 1531. Other items are particular to the recipient. So ofrendas can be personalized by placing photographs of the memorialized person. You can also set out favorite or new clothes for them. And for children, toys and candies are especially crucial on their ofrendas. And yet some items are merely decorative, and this is an effort to beautify the ofrenda, but some of these decorative items can hold special meanings.
So what type of food exactly would be placed on an ofrenda?
Favorite meals are an essential way to indulge a loved one. Mainstay entrees can include mole and tamales, and both of these foods are extremely labor intensive. So it's an indication of how much you're wanting to do something special for your loved one. You can often also find seasonal fruits and traditional sweets, such as dulce de calabaza, which is a candied squash, and dulce de camote, which is a candied sweet potato. Also, you'll find chocolate or chocolate, atole, which is a drink made of seasoned maize. Soft drinks and alcoholic beverages are also favorites. During this season, bakeries across the country will offer Day of the Dead bread. This bread is found in countless forms and is a fundamental component of any ofrenda.
Is there any specific imagery or artistic elements associated with Day of the Dead? Are there special arts that would go on the ofrenda?
Yes, there are. Mexico has got a very rich and elaborate art tradition, and some cities and regions are recognized for their particular Day of the Dead products. You'll find all sorts of skull and skeleton imagery in various craft forms and made from many various materials. You'll also see papel picado, which is a perforated tissue paper, and this is a Day of the Dead staple. Sugar skulls, which many of us are familiar with, and different varieties are found throughout the country. You also see miniature skeleton figures, which represent all sorts of occupations, such as doctors, athletes, students, musicians. And these miniatures would depict what these individuals might do in daily life. But perhaps the most widely recognized image of a skeleton is known as La Catrina, and she has become a central figure in Day of the Dead celebrations.
In contemporary history, has Day of the Dead always been popular in Mexico?
Actually, there have been moments in Mexican history when Day of the Dead was seen pejoratively as cosas de indios, or things that Indians did. During these periods, Day of the Dead survived mostly in regions with large indigenous populations. But you begin to see changes in this attitude during periods of nation building in the country. There were concerted efforts made to highlight indigenous cultures and incorporate them into a broader national identity. The muralist movement is an example of these nation building efforts. Lithographer Jose Guadalupe Posada popularized skeleton engravings, and much of his works were social critiques of a nation that was in transition in the early 20th century. His most well-known design is La Catrina, and she represents indigenous Mexicans who are aspiring to be more European in dress and demeanor. She's also referred to as La Catrina Garboncero, which is a term used to indicate indigenous people who are denying their heritage. Later, this image was made even more famous by artist Diego Rivera. He prominently placed his version of La Catrina in his mural entitled Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in Central Alameda. So over time, Day of the Dead transformed into a national expression. It's a source of pride. And regardless of ethnicity, social status, or religious preferences, It seems like the entire country now engages in remembering loved ones during Días de los Muertos.
So what are some of the factors that may have caused changes in the Day of the Dead tradition?
Sure. Day of the Dead, like so many aspects of traditional culture, exist in a larger environment. And it's subject to change from within communities, but also from outside forces. Things like movies and internet have presented this tradition to the world. And it's often without any historical or cultural context. The deep meaning of the event often gets reduced to the simplest of ideas, and a lot of times misinformation can be miscommunicated. For example, the 2015 James Bond movie staged a Day of the Dead parade specifically for filming in Mexico City. And as a result of this, the following year, local organizers held the first ever parade. So now people can purchase Day of the Dead items throughout the world, and these items can range from decorative home items to wedding cakes. In the US, these items are easily available at major retail stores and on the internet.
And what has been the role of tourism in the spread of Dia de los Muertos through the United States and worldwide?
Day of the Dead tourism draws thousands of worldwide visitors to communities, mostly in central and southern Mexico. Perhaps some of the most well-known celebrations are Michoacan, Oaxaca, and around Mexico City. The introduction of large numbers of outsiders has led to changes in community cultural practices. Tours also drives the demand for Day of the Dead crafts. Today, in tourist markets, you can obtain these crafts year-round, where previously you could only get them during the fall. Tourism shapes the world's understanding of Day of the Dead and contributes to its expansion beyond Mexico.
And has Day of the Dead always been an American celebration?
Well, you would think so, but actually Day of the Dead is a relatively new expression in the United States. During the 1960s and 70s, we were in the middle of a civil rights movement. And at this moment, Mexican Americans organized to fight racism. This period of cultural and political advocacy is known as the Chicano movement. It also recognized the indigenous roots of Mexicans and Mexican Americans. During this time, Chicanos traveled to Mexico to learn about their indigenous traditions, and then they returned to the United States to share them in their communities. This identity recovery manifested itself through literature, through art, and cultural practices. Day of the Dead was a quintessential tradition by which Chicanos could demonstrate their indigenous identity. Many times artists organized Day of the Dead events and constructed ofrendas in local art centers. Chicanos built on the tradition they found in Mexico and later added components such as parades, plays, poetry readings, Azteca dancers, and mariachi music. And what you have is over the time, Day of the Dead activities spread to even larger audiences. Today, this event is observed in cities throughout the United States. Museums and universities erect ofrendas. City recreation departments produce elaborate events, and public schools often teach about it. And of course, bars will sponsor pub crawls during this event.
Why is Day of the Dead often called the Mexican Halloween?
Day of the Dead has incorrectly been called Mexican Halloween, and while the two have some commonalities, it's appropriate that each tradition is understood based on its own history and characteristics. Europeans brought Christian beliefs, including a tradition of remembering the dead. We know this as Halloween or Hallows Eve, All Saints Eve, and by many other names. In Mexico, this tradition and other Roman Catholic practices were combined with pre-Columbian traditions. However, for Mexicans, Day of the Dead remains a distinct commemoration with indigenous legacies firmly recognized. It is a time to be with departed loved ones and to celebrate their lives. In the United States, Halloween has all but lost its original purpose and has become a time for children to trick or treat or for adults to attend Halloween parties.
So why do you think it is important to study this tradition and for us to interpret it here at the National Museum of the American Indian?
I think it's important for us to continue our work on Day of the Dead because it continues to serve as a means by which many Native peoples deal with the loss of loved ones. Its importance as a significant human patrimony is recognized by its inscription in UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Day of the Dead has endured many changes and many influences, and not all of these have come from within the indigenous communities. Given the rapid changes in technology and globalism, this tradition is bound to continue evolving. And as of yet, the future impact to Day of the Dead in Indigenous communities is unknown. So here at NMAI, we try to understand and honor this and other Indigenous traditions through our public programs and scholarship.
So Cynthia, thank you very much. That was very interesting, and you've told us so much about Dia de los Muertos. And you've also made me hungry. Why don't we go next to Neftali Duran? He's Mixteco from Oaxaca, and he'll be telling us more about the foods associated with Dia de los Muertos. Welcome to Neftali, and thank you to Cynthia.